Hello. Welcome to my kitchen. Everything is basically dirty, and that's just the way it is. I think that maybe cooking shows are like the biggest part of television. This is the golden age of television. If no one has told you, let me be the one to tell you. We are living in the golden age of television. So, fuck my theater, am I right? But there's also cookbooks. Everyone has a cookbook, too. I only have 2 cookbooks, but it seems anybody can just publish one of those. Have we not figured them all out? Have we not made every recipe? I guess not. But what if, like, John Green and, like, John Grisham figured out how to, like, partner up with, like, Chrissy Teigen? I think they'd run the world, honestly. The cooking sphere would never recover. But yeah, I only have 2 cookbooks. And one of them my grandmother handmade me. So, are you crying yet? I actually have it. It's just a binder. I don't know if you were expecting something else. But yeah, my grandmother made this for me when I was in college. Because she asked me what I wanted for graduation. And I wanted her to make me a cookbook. Because it seemed like really useful being able to feed yourself. Not just having ramen every day for the rest of your life. And she did a pretty solid job. It's pretty weird. You can tell that she got a little bored halfway through the cookbook. This is the first part. It's like very scrapbooky. We've got backgrounds. We have recipes. It's delightful. And then about halfway through, there's just like whole blank sheets. I guess for me to fill in with the recipes I want. But there's also just loose recipes still in just the pockets of the binder that you never put on pages. Man. It's kind of weird, though, calling her my grandma. Because I didn't grow up calling her my grandmother. I call her Anne. Her name is Anne. And I don't know, that kind of feels corporate, right? Everybody knows an Anne in HR, right? It's mainly because my mother had me really young. She had me when she was 14. And so my grandmother is like the age of most of my friends' moms. And my great-grandmother is who I called my grandma. And I had her into college. She was part of my life. And was a very phenomenal woman. Very strong, wild, and I have never been chewed out worse than when I forgot to send a thank you card to her after like my 14th birthday. And she sent me some money and she wrote me a really disappointed letter and left me a really disappointed voicemail. And there was never a moment again when I did not remember to thank the people who provide for me in any capacity. Incredible woman. Amazing cook. She would, for every year for Anne's birthday, she would make grape leaves, which are like Greek Mediterranean dish. Pretty common. And man, those things. Jeez. They were cold and weird and slimy, but delicious. And I tried to make them for the first time last year, when the world shut down, when there was a casual pandemic happening all around us. And I did not do it correctly. And then the second time I continued to not do it correctly. And then luckily, I met someone whose family is from the Mediterranean. And they kind of gave me some tips. And I made them okay. And that's really the goal when we're cooking, is just to be okay. I remember the first time that I actually made these cookies that I'm making today. It was a little bit after The first time I like made cookies in general, which I think a lot of people, like the first cookies that you made were no bakes, which I think are more dangerous to make than like a chocolate chip cookie. I can remember my spindly little sad weak arms hovering over that pot on the burner, just trying to mix the peanut butter with the chocolate. It's a nightmare. Why do we do that? No bakes. Just because, I don't know, I guess maybe ovens are just scarier. A kid can get inside an oven, I suppose. But a stovetop is dangerous as well. Okay? My mom, she told me not to touch the burner after she made lunch one day. And she went and did something. And then, of course, I stood there in the kitchen and I put my hand on the burner right away. And I burned my hand really bad. And there was something in my head, though, that, like, knew not to scream about it. Because it was something I wasn't supposed to do. And I didn't run to the sink in the kitchen to put my hand under the water. I ran down the hallway into the bathroom and closed the bathroom up and put my hand under the water to relieve the pain. And it was a while before I heard my mom come back in the kitchen and she was like, where'd you go? What are you doing? I was like, nothing. Nothing. Just hanging out in the bathroom. And she knew. There's like, people talk about an intuition that mothers have. I think that's pretty real. I think that's pretty real with anyone who loves somebody. You can like feel when things are askew. And so she knew that I had done something that I wasn't supposed to do. Then I made no bakes with my grandma the next week when my mom moved out. I was having a hard time. Because when I was a kid, I never thought about the fact that she was 14 years old when she had me, right? Like, what was I doing at 14 years old? I was in marching band, complaining about band camp and asking for a hairless rat as a pet. Not giving birth to a kid and then trying to raise it in the world, right? So now as an adult, like, I forgive her a lot more for leaving. And I love my grandparents. And I'm very lucky that they took me in, that they decided to be my guardians. I mean, my grandfather had just gotten out of jail casually when I was born, and he and my grandmother had only recently started dating, and about a year later was when they got married, and they adopted me. And then a couple years later, my mom left. But yeah, I get it. It's really hard. Just existing, being responsible for someone else, I honestly can't imagine. But I was angry, and my grandma did this thing of any time I was overly dramatic, which was constantly, we would learn how to make something new. And I don't know really where she got that nurturing nature from, right? Like, we had a petting zoo level of animals in our house is kind of how I would describe it. And they all lived to be way too old, like uncomfortably old. Every animal was like 19 to 21 years old, just too much. And they're all falling apart, but she kept them alive. And I don't know much about my grandmother's upbringing, and she didn't talk about it that much. I know that she's from the West. And when I was a kid, a little after when my mom left, her mother came to live with us. I didn't get to know her that well. she was a good woman. She had been a nurse, and honestly, she helped answer a lot of questions that I had as my body changed, and that's a nightmare. But she had Alzheimer's, and that was hard to navigate, especially not knowing her and playing the role of these people in her past for her a lot of the time. When I'd sit with her, whenever Anne would need to leave to go to the grocery store, and wanting to keep her memories alive for her as well. But Anne and her mother would make muffins every day. Every single day they would bake muffins. And I don't know if you have ever thought about having a muffin budget, but it's expensive to bake muffins every day. And every day it was so wild. We would get new flavors of muffins of just what was in the cabinet left at this point. I think at the worst, I think it was like freezer burnt walnuts and like cashew pieces were the muffin ingredients. And then when I was in college and my great-grandmother, my grandfather's mother, she had a stroke and couldn't take care of herself anymore and moved in with my grandparents my freshman year of college. And it happened all so suddenly, but Anne started taking care of her immediately. And they made muffins every day. And I remember my grandma started like freezing them, which I didn't understand because they weren't good. They weren't delightful. They weren't delicious. I don't think she would argue that they were delicious or delightful, but that preservation, that continuing, because even after my grandma was gone, we were still eating these muffins. Muffins for the mothers. And cookies for the kids. Yeah, I was the first grandbaby. Makes sense. But even after me, we now have, I don't even know, like 9 or something of these little shits running around there. But everybody in Ann Ma, she got an upgraded title with the younger kids, Ann Ma. I think the staple of cookie is like a chocolate chip cookie, right? For us, for some reason, and I think it's because she's a hippie, we make these oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. I don't know that they're actually better for you. I just dumped like a gallon of butter and fucking sugar in this thing. But that's the thing. That's ours. The kids, we get to make chocolate chip cookies. And the wildest part of it, making it with Anne, is the fact that she is allergic to chocolate. Like, debilitates her the entire day. Like, awful migraines. And she developed it, like, after she had had her kids, like my uncles. And she told me one time that she used to drop the kids off at school and they would have, like, a chocolate bar or something, and then she would sit in the car and, like, smell the wrapper. Because she loved it. She was so in love with chocolate, and then her body just took that away. And that's incredible to me, to be able to still work with something, to still create with something that literally causes you pain. But yeah, we take these pieces that on their own are like nothing. Just uncooked oats, flour, sugar, salt, chocolate, cause you so much pain, right? You take these things, you combine them, you make something warm that you can share, you can use to communicate love. We started baking a lot more when I was a teenager, like right before I turned 13. And it was definitely because I was acting out a lot more, I suppose. Not in the same way like my mom was, who was like a punk in the 90s, right? Acting out. And my family always had like so many little ragamuffins running around because they're so full of love. But I was acting out my own way, which was being cruel, mainly. Being really mean. And not having much of a social life. Or caring. So we started to make more and more complex things, baking together. Did it all. And it was the fall of 2006, a little after my 13th birthday. We had moved far away from my school and my friends. We were having a really hard time financially. And I walked into the living room. My grandma and grandpa were. And I told them I wanted to die. And my grandfather started crying. Because it wasn't a show. It wasn't dramatic. You'd seen it before. And I was lucky, right, that my grandmother immediately picked up the phone. And she just started calling anyone. She called her best friend. Just looking for help. She didn't know what to do, but she knew she had to do something. And I went and met my therapist the next day. And shortly after, I was diagnosed with type 1 bipolar disorder. This really, really, really cute little thing. And we figured out that all this time leading up, when we started baking, my grandmother, maybe unconsciously or maybe because she is literally a genius, had figured out this way of quelling the episodes, of finding a structured way to take this energy, to take control of my mind in a way, and create something that I could share, that I could use to express myself at my core, those around me, even if I was afraid or didn't know how to do it. But I still get a surprise from people I even knew in high school at the time, who I've reconnected with now in the social media age. When I tell them, or I post something about mental health and all of that, even though they knew me during all of this time, and none of them would hesitate to say that I was dramatic or, in proper terms, manic or depressed. there's still that face. That shock. To name something gives it power. It also produces fear. But in my years of therapy, right, it's been shit. I don't know. How many? What's the math on that? I am 27. I started going to therapy when I was 13 years old. I've been going to therapy longer than I was alive when I started at this point. I've been in therapy more of my life than not, really. And I was lucky to have a really wonderful therapist who followed me throughout most of it. And in that, we unpacked a lot, right, of not only the things that come naturally with how my brain is built, but the external factors of abandonment, wanting to shut down and push people out. Because if I didn't do it, they'd do it to me. My mom came back. Don't worry, right? Back of your mind, you're thinking about it possibly. I am a happy story. My mom came back. She lived her life. She's one of the most incredible people I currently know. I'm really proud of her. But definitely wasn't easy. We didn't have a good time when I was in high school because we also were going through my diagnosis, and then our house got foreclosed on. We went bankrupt. We didn't have a lot of money. We were living under the poverty line. And to keep me in my school district, I had to move in with my mom, who I hadn't spent more than a weekend with, maybe, before that point. And she was married to a really wonderful man. The things were hard there, too. Job stability is hard, and we were living in this house that didn't have any hot water, no insulation, and it was right next to a train track. And sometimes I just have to be hungry. And I know that that killed them. Because they were honestly doing the best they could. But things got better. And we moved into a great apartment my senior year. I had joined the speech and debate team. Fucking killed it. Got into a really great college. Met really incredible people there. Moved here to the lovely, lovely city of Louisville, Kentucky. It's a piece of shit a little bit, but we're working on it. But I'm still in therapy. Because that feeling hasn't gone away. It won't. And my disorder hasn't gone away. It won't. But I'm hoping for a better future for others at this point. Because I've always felt unwanted in the spaces I love. I felt unwanted in my family. I felt unwanted in my art form. I remember doing my first play when I was in elementary school, and it was like a Christmas pageant type thing, and I wanted so bad to be one of the kids that like Santa came up to and gave gifts and got to sing a little song. But it was for a group of kids who were a family together. It's like a sister and brother. So I didn't get to do it. Because the other kid that got cast, well, it wasn't believable that we could be siblings. Right? Because I am a black woman who looks very racially ambiguous. But we haven't gotten to the point where you can see me next to a white person on a stage. And you think, oh, maybe they're siblings. Even though that's what my family looks like. Because the suspension of disbelief in theater seems to stop at my body and it stops at my skin. In high school, I didn't play any part that wasn't an animal or a kooky little nobody else character. Because there wasn't any other place for me to be. And that's not true, right? That there isn't any other place for me to be. But if I imagine me on a stage next to a white person, even I don't believe that that person would be my love interest. Because of the way I look. And that's something I'm still working on. I hope it's something you're working on. Because that's not true. Like, I've lived real life with those people in that story. But for some reason, we can't even fictionalize it and face it in person. And I've had to create spaces for myself. Right? Where I get to be the hottest bitch on screen, even though I'm the only bitch on screen. But doesn't make the fact that I am the hottest bitch on screen not true. But I still can be, and we will be. But I've been asked to minimize, to take out parts of myself constantly in this world, this place I love, my art, these spaces. I've never played a role that I felt comfortable or seen, or could imagine myself as a kid getting to see on a stage in a space that I was falling madly in love with and relate. It hasn't happened. I hope it does. It doesn't need to be me. Because while I do have an incredibly big ego, I know it doesn't have to be me. So I refuse to redact any piece of myself anymore. This is who I am. All parts, all skin, all life, all mind, all belief. We're meant to be unexpected. We're meant to be unknowable. When you take pieces of a person and put them together, you won't ever know what you're gonna get in the end, right? So I'm gonna continue to do what Anne taught me. To take all these things that myself still hasn't come to love or does not see as worthwhile or palatable, and I'm going to create. And I won't stop. And maybe we'll make something good out of it. Or maybe it'll be a little lumpy, not too cute. But hey, it's something. And damn it, somebody's gonna love it. So I hope you love yourself and give yourself a break. Share that love and share that break. and have a great rest of your night.